I could give you a prescription? What if I could write you a prescription that you don't have to go to the pharmacy to fill, that you could fill every month without going back to the pharmacy, without a copay, without writing a check, without reaching into your pocket? And what if this prescription could help you lose 40 pounds in 2 months? Yeah. Help you lose 5 inches off your waist. Get rid of rheumatoid arthritis, joint pain, acid reflux, bowel urgency. Make your hair thicker. Get rid of a skin rash you've had for 18 years and took steroid creams for it wouldn't even go away. Lifted your mood, got rid of depression, got you off antidepressants, reduced your appetite, cut your calorie intake, got you off antihypertensive and diabetes medications. What if I could write that prescription for you and it cost you nothing? Is there such a drug? We have a multi-billion-dollar drug industry. Is there such a drug that would cover all those different conditions and make you feel spectacular? I don't know of a drug like that. So what the heck kind of prescription? You folks know already, right? It's Eat Nothing made of wheat. Now, let me tell you, this message has come a long way in the last 3 years. So 3 years ago, I would have gotten a bunch of glazed eyes, dumbfounded looks, and yells. So now people are receptive because they're starting to see what this means. But let me tell you how I came to this message. So I didn't just make this up one day. I was practicing cardiology. We're going back 20 years now. And my life back then was doing heart procedures, angioplasty, stents, all that kind of business. I became very unhappy with that. It's very unsatisfying to have somebody get a stent, have a heart attack, come back 3 months later, need more procedures, a year later, bypass surgery. So I wanted to help these people stop that revolving door of heart disease. That's what makes hospitals rich. It's what makes my colleagues well-to-do. But it does nothing for the disease except keep you alive another day. That's all it does. It does not stop the disease. So I wanted to give people better tools to gain control over the scary thing called heart disease. Well, one thing is quite clear. If you have blood sugar higher than normal, diabetes, pre-diabetes, or even just a little bit above normal, you have lost control over heart health. You have lost control over your safety, over your heart health. So I used a very almost stupid, simple observation, and that is, what food? I asked myself, what food dominates breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and raises blood sugar very high? We're going to talk about why that is. Well, the obvious answer is things made of wheat. We're told healthy whole grains, but really, wheat. Few people are eating millet and sorghum for breakfast every morning, right? So it's, for all practical purposes, this thing called wheat. So I asked my patients, let's try this thing. Let's take wheat out of your diet. Here's a nice 2-page summary, real easy to do. They took it home. They came back 3 months later, 4 months, 6 months, and their blood sugar would be lower. But they said to me, well, you know, I did this, and it worked, but why did I lose 48 pounds? Why did my waist shrink 6 inches in 2 months? Why did my rash disappear? Why did my asthma go away and I was able to throw away 2 inhalers? Why was my depression so much better? I'm now off antidepressants. Why is my acid reflux and bowel urgency, irritable bowel syndrome gone? Why is my Crohn's disease so much better? I'm off 2 drugs. Well, at first I said, I have no idea. It must be some crazy coincidence. But I kept on doing it over and over. It became clear there was something fundamentally and desperately wrong with this thing called wheat. So I started to ask tough questions. Why would this happen? Why would this thing that has the halo of blessing from our own government, we're told it should dominate your diet, it should fill your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks, you should feed it to your children, it should dominate school lunches? Why would removing it change people's lives? We have to go way back. We have to go way back to understand these issues. Let's go back 10,000 years. So before the Egyptian Empire, before the Roman Empire, before the Greek Empire, people were still hunter-gatherers. And people saw the wild cows, aurochs, and wild goats, ibex, eating this grass. And we turned to each other and said, can we eat that stuff too? So we tried. What happens when a nice member of the Homo sapiens species eats grass? We get very sick, right? You throw it up, you pass it out, diarrhea, because you lack the digestive apparatus to consume grass. So us clever humans figured out, well, we can't eat the roots, we can't eat the stalk, we can't eat the leaves, we can't eat the husk. We can only eat the seed. So we isolated the seed, ground it, pulverized it, heated it, and we turned it into porridge. We figured out we could eat it. So that was the first consumption of grains. Now, what had we eaten the preceding time humans walked the earth? Did we eat the seeds of that grass? No, we ate the organs and flesh of animals, nuts, seeds, mushrooms, figs, fruit, the things that humans instinctively regard as food. But we did not eat the seeds of grasses. So what was that stuff we ate? That was einkorn wheat, a 14-chromosome plant. Now, I won't bore you still with talk of chromosomes, but how many chromosomes in all of you, nice members of the species Homo sapiens? 46. So let's say you're going to have children. You and your mate are going to contribute 46 chromosomes to your offspring. How many chromosomes in your offspring? 92, right? No, of course not, right? So 46. So all humans have 46 chromosomes. Well, oddly, grasses don't have to adhere to those rules. They can combine their genetic codes with each other. It only happens once in a great while, but einkorn wheat did that several thousand years ago with a wild grass. A wild grass, because einkorn wheat was a grass. And the result was emmer wheat. So 14 chromosomes from ancient einkorn of pre-biblical times, 14 chromosomes from an unrelated grass. We get emmer wheat, the wheat of the Bible. So when we hear about Moses and biblical allusions to bread, they're talking about emmer wheat, the 28 chromosome strain. Now it happened again. Emmer mated with another grass that contributed another 14 chromosomes, and we get the 42 chromosome plant, the Triticum species, and spelt. So these are the strains of wheat that predate what we've got. Now, well, so what? We get a few additional chromosomes and shifts around in genes and so on. What difference do a few chromosomes make? So if we line up the genetic code of an orangutan and somebody like Albert Einstein, we've got about 98% overlap. So a little bit of difference in chromosomes and genes makes a world of difference, right? I don't believe orangutans can talk about quantum theory. All right, that brings us up to 1960. So in 1960, geneticists, agricultural scientists said, we're unhappy with what nature did to wheat. We want more yield per acre. So you see these three scientists standing in a field. This is east of Mexico City at the Institute for Maize and Wheat Improvement. See them standing in this wheat field, and the wheat stands about shoulder high to these grown men. So they were unhappy with this kind of wheat. So over thousands and thousands of experiments, they mated wheat with other strains of wheat from all over the world. They mated wheat with other grasses, because wheat's a grass, right? So they mated wheat with other grasses. They did this many, many, many times, and they finally got this. This is Dr. Norman Borlaug, one of those scientists, on the cover of Life magazine, 1970. And he's holding up the high-yield semi-dwarf strain of wheat. an 18 to 24-inch tall plant. Can you see the big, thick stalk and the big seed and the long seed head? So this stands about this tall. If a wind blows through the field, it won't collapse like tall traditional wheat will. Those large seeds and large seed heads yield about twofold, fourfold, as much as eightfold more per acre. So Borlaug was a serious guy. He was interested in helping solve world hunger. This was introduced into Ethiopia and Bangladesh, and countries suffering famine. Famine was converted to surplus within 1 year, and he was hailed a hero. So high-yield semi-dwarf wheat took off like crazy because of the yield per acre. It didn't stop there. Agribusiness. You know agribusiness, don't you? They got into the act. And here's one of their products called Clearfield wheat. They took Dr. Borlaug's semi-dwarf strain and they subjected it to the techniques of mutagenesis, the purposeful induction of mutations. In this case, they used a chemical called sodium azide. Let me tell you about sodium azide. Sodium azide is an industrial compound. It's very toxic. There have been several instances of accidental human ingestion. When that happens, the poison control people tell us, if you witness an accidental ingestion of sodium azide and the victim collapses, do not offer them CPR. In effect, let them die. Because if you offer them CPR, you're going to die. And if the victim vomits, don't throw the vomit in the sink because the vomit will explode. And that has actually happened in real life. So they take the seeds and embryos of wheat, subject it to this chemical to induce mutations. Now, if you induce mutations in a plant or an animal, can you control what mutations you get? If I mutate, let's say an orangutan fetus in the uterus of its mother at age 2 weeks, can I say, I would like an orangutan that stands 2 feet tall and can climb coconut trees really fast and throw down lots of coconuts so I can make lots of money from them? Can I now expose that orangutan fetus and get that exact mutation? Of course not, you can't. Maybe you have to do it thousands, tens of thousands of times before you do it. Well, they did that. And they exposed modern high-yield semi-dwarf wheat to chemical mutagenesis, and they got the mutation they wanted, which was resistance to the herbicide imizamox. So this is just like the glyphosate-resistant corn, Roundup-ready corn, right? The farmer can spray his field with glyphosate or Roundup. It kills the weeds, doesn't kill the corn, but now you have a corn that has some weird genetics and is full of glyphosate. Same thing here. You spray your wheat full of imizamox or beyond, kills the weeds, doesn't kill the wheat, but you got something strange in that wheat, and you got wheat now packed solid with imizamox. Now, in their marketing, they say this is the product of enhanced traditional plant breeding techniques, not genetic modification. So you'll see this over and over again. The smoke screens sent up by agribusiness. It's not genetic modification. It's chemical, in this case, chemical mutagenesis, or gamma ray mutagenesis, or X-ray mutagenesis, or other bizarre and extreme techniques that are not, in their language, genetic modification, but in many instances are worse than genetic modifications. So just because it doesn't involve gene splicing techniques, genetic modification, does it make it good? So now we have this strain of wheat growing on 1 million acres in the US, in the Pacific Northwest. It's not rare. Well, so what? What does this do? What does this do to the wheat plant and to unwitting humans who consume this stuff? Does it change anything? Yes. So we know, here's one of many reports, that there's a gene called the GLIA alpha 9 sequence. This gene is very uncommon in the wheat of 1960. This gene is present in most strains of 2014. So this was increased, it was enriched in modern wheat by all these changes introduced. Well, what's the big deal here? Well, the GLIA alpha 9 gene makes a protein that is the most flagrant cause of celiac disease. We've had a quadrupling of celiac disease in the last 50 years. We've had a doubling over the last 20 years, and a lot of it is due to the changes introduced by agribusiness. This is a report from the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in New York, one of the world's most famous genetics laboratory. And they analyzed multiple strains of wheat, and they said, this and related research reveals that the bread wheat genome, the genetic code, has undergone rapid and significant changes. So it's not me saying changes have been introduced, it's the people who are in agriculture, agricultural science. Wheat has been changed, it looks different, and its genetic code is different, its biochemistry, its proteins are all different from the stuff that mom or grandma had. So I write this nasty book. And I'll tell you, well, thank you. And I'll tell you what compelled me to write this book. I've discovered when I asked these questions, I expected a big zero, that nothing had been done, that there was no, the exact opposite occurred. I was astounded at how much was known, but not put together. And we were continuing to be told, eat more of this stuff, let it dominate your diet. And I was astounded that the science had already been done, but had not been talked about. And then I had a woman come to my office, the turning point for me. This is a few years ago, 38-year-old school teacher. And she came to me for palpitations, just flip-floppies. Turned out to be relatively minor. But she told me she also had ulcerative colitis. And she would actually sit there in my office and do this, because she was in pain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on 3 drugs, 2 oral drugs and an intravenous drug. Nothing was working. She continued to have pain, diarrhea, cramps, and bleeding. So she was receiving transfusions every 2 or 3 months, and they could not control it. So her gastroenterologist tells her it's time for a colectomy. We're going to remove your colon and give you an orifice on the surface, an ileostomy, and give you a bag to wear. Okay? She's 38 years old, school teacher. She's got 8 and 9-year-old little boys in her classroom. You know what happens when little boys hear those sounds the bags make, right? Not to mention she's 38 years old. So she's telling me this. Now, I was seeing her for these flip-floppies. I said, you know, I haven't talked to you about nutrition because you're here for something unrelated. But let's talk about what I do with most of my other patients. Can we talk about removing wheat? And she says, what are you talking about? They biopsied me twice through endoscopy. And they tested all my blood for celiac disease. I don't have celiac disease. And I say, I understand. I'm not talking about celiac disease. But I've seen lives transformed, including gastrointestinal lives transformed by taking this thing out of your diet. So I gave her that 2-page handout. She goes home kind of reluctantly, thinking, maybe he's nuts. She comes back 3 months later, big smile on her face. She says, I lost 38 pounds. I didn't even tell her that she would lose weight. This wasn't done for weight loss. It was done because she was on the eve of her colon removal and ileostomy bag surgery. She didn't have the surgery. I said, tell me what else happened. She said, within 5 days, all the cramps, diarrhea, and bleeding stopped. A couple weeks passed, I stopped one drug. A few more weeks, I stopped another drug. A few more weeks after that, I stopped a third drug. I was cured. I felt better than I had in years. But the turning point for me was, then she said this. I told my gastroenterologist, I went to him, I said, look at me. I look different, I feel different, I'm cured. And he said, it's a coincidence. So that made me so angry that here we have the science, we know changes have been made, no one's talking about it. And I'm seeing lives transform. This woman was spared colon removal surgery. So you can't undo colon removal surgery. You can't undo an ileostomy bag, at least not easily. and no one's talking about it. So that's why I decided to write this book that makes some people very angry.